We all know how unfiltered Kyle Petty comes, but did he go too far this time? In a recent podcast, he called Bubba mentally fragile and not suited for NASCAR for declining a pre-race, pre-taped interview before the race at Daytona. But let us tell you, Bubba isn't taking it sitting down this time. Welcome to Up Close Racing. Don't forget to subscribe and smash the bell icon for more NASCAR content. Wallace just squeaked into the playoffs in Daytona, despite not winning any races and only having 4 top 5 finishes. So you can imagine the pressure he was under before the race, but Kyle Petty didn't seem too compassionate. Things got all sorts of heated when Wallace chose not to talk to the media before the big race. According to Kyle, his refusal to do interviews wasn't fair to the fans or sport. To him, it's not just cool for Wallace to skip out on interviews because he believes drivers get paid to do more than just race. They're also expected to do PR and marketing stuff. Now, it'd be cool if he just stopped there, but Petty being petty, pun intended, took it a step further and suggested that if Wallace can't handle the mental stuff, maybe he shouldn't be in NASCAR at all. Here's what he said. If mentally he is that fragile, then maybe it's not the game for him. Ouch, that one's gotta sting a little, right? And it did. That blow was personal, and Bubba did not take kindly to it. And you know what? It's almost like Kyle might have sensed that his comments about Bubba's mental toughness were a bit too strong, so he tried to tone things down a bit in the same podcast. He started talking about Wallace's lack of experience and how it might be the reason for declining interviews. He even agreed to cut him some slack, but he didn't back down entirely on the issue of interviews. He thought Bubba not talking to the media was still super disrespectful, in his own words. Not doing interviews is never acceptable. You've got to take the good with the bad in this sport. When you win, if you want us to come talk to you, expect us to come talk to you also when you lose. And when things are good, if you want us to talk to you, you've got to talk to us when things are bad. I think that's just a slap in the face in a lot of ways to fans and the media and everybody, because you're not above that. However, in an attempt to cool things down once again, he acknowledged that going through more of these situations would likely make Wallace mentally tougher over time. It's like a trial by fire, but for now, Petty was willing to give him a bit of a break. The question is, did it work? Well, if we're being honest, then no. Wallace didn't take kindly to Kyle's comments. In fact, he chose the moment right before the playoffs race at Darlington to deliver his response. When asked about his reactions to Petty's comments, Wallace quipped, "Well, I'm just here to fulfill my media obligations before the race, so yeah, I got a word count though. I start speaking too many words, I start to get really anxious and mentally fragile, so now on to the stuff that matters." In his defense, he also explained that he had never faced a cutoff race with that level of pressure, where he had to manage a points advantage or potentially need to win. So he made a request to NASCAR to conduct his mandatory weekly press time on Wednesday instead of Saturday at the track, and NASCAR granted that request. So in fact, he had already done his media duties earlier in the week, and another point he made was that, well, the media doesn't pay his bills. Here's what he said. "It's funny, I read that. We had the opportunity to do media during the week to free up the obligations at the racetrack and to focus on what we needed to do, which was get the 23 car in the playoffs. That's the most important thing." He also mentioned that while talking to the media is important, it doesn't pay his bills. But at the same time, he made it clear that he didn't outright decline interviews, but rather balanced his obligations to ensure the team's primary goal was achieved, making it into the playoffs. And guess what? He did achieve that goal, which sets the stage for his next race at Kansas Speedway, where he claimed his latest Cup Series victory last year. So in the end, his focus on racing paid off. Kyle, on the other hand, faced a lot of criticism for his harsh words about Bubba refusing interviews. People thought he went too far in calling Wallace mentally weak and questioning his place in the sport. However, not everyone was on Wallace's side. Veteran NASCAR reporter Bob Pockrass weighed in with a comment under a Twitter post aligning himself with Kyle's viewpoint. Pockrass wrote, "Kyle Petty isn't wrong. And for Bubba to bring this up almost a week later, he is so fragile mentally and not a professional athlete." This comment added another layer to the ongoing debate and left us all questioning if the war of words persists, or will Wallace and his critics find a way to move forward as he competes in the playoffs. Only time will tell, but for now, we've got to tell you, this isn't the first time Petty has been extremely critical of Bubba. Back in 2022, Petty claimed that Wallace intentionally wrecked Kyle Larson and that he should have been suspended for the rest of the year, the whole year. While NASCAR only suspended Bubba for one race, Petty was pulling at all strings, even pointing out that Wallace drives for Denny Hamlin, who has been an advocate for safety in the sport, He even brought up Wallace's teammate Kurt Busch, whose career was nearly derailed by an accident in a similar car. He also criticized Bubba for walking across the racetrack while cars were passing on both sides, citing that it wasn't safe and should also result in suspension. He also highlighted that Wallace physically confronted Larson by shoving him, which is a physical confrontation that, if done on the sidewalk, could lead to handcuffs. That's not all, though. He also mentioned how Wallace didn't get in an ambulance but instead walked back to the pits, which he saw as another violation. And to wrap things up, he even went as far as mentioning Wallace's statements after the incident, suggesting they were untruthful. Oh, and he didn't buy Wallace's explanation that the steering broke either. Now, as you can probably already tell, Kyle likes to keep himself busy with opinions in the world of NASCAR. So after this recent clash with Bubba Wallace, he's now turned his attention to another driver, but this time he's showing his softer side. Aww. Fresh from the action at Darlington Raceway for the 2023 playoffs opener, Kyle recently stepped in front of the camera to share his thoughts on the race. Surprisingly, he had positive words for Kyle Larson and his team. The Darlington race saw Kyle Larson taking advantage of the support he received from drivers like Denny Hamlin to secure the pole position. Hendrick Motorsports hadn't been having the best season, with only 2 cars making it to the final 16. The odds were against them, but Kyle's win in the Southern 500 gave the team a much-needed boost. When discussing the race, Petty couldn't help but applaud the driving skills of Larson and the runner-up Tyler Reddick. He attributed their aggressive style to what he called midget-type racing and commented, "Kyle Larson is just, that place was built for him and Tyler Reddick." It's a different tone from Petty this time, as he acknowledged the impressive performance of these 2 drivers at Darlington. It goes to show that in the world of NASCAR, opinions can change from one race to the next. Coming back to his ongoing feud with Bubba, we've got to say Petty's criticism had some truth, given the uncertainty around Bubba's playoff spot. But Wallace's reply was a clear message of, "Don't mess with me." If anything, Petty has made it very clear that in the world of NASCAR, it's all about being accessible to the media. Whether you're riding high on a win or dealing with a tough loss, it's part of the deal. And it's seen as a way to connect with fans and show respect to the media covering the sport. Do you think Kyle was right to take a jab at Bubba's issues with mental health? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to watch the next one that will pop up on your screen and subscribe to our channel to stay in the loop with all things NASCAR.